now you basically need 60 votes, meaning the Democrats can kill basically any legislation in the Senate. Unless it's bipartisan, you can't get anything through the Senate. And by the way, Elon specifically asked them about, on behalf of Trump, to get rid of the 60 vote threshold, and they refused to do it. So, that's more of the same. That's more of the gridlock in the Senate. And Dark Side, to your point, getting nominees through is very different from getting legislation through. And there are Republicans
arrests to change the entire balance of power. Right, like that's what I think.
And we've already had that.
I see it as
we had a senator being arrested.
There's three kinds of people there, right? There's the people who are the loyalists, the people who are kind of doing this like calculated political move, and then there's the people who have something to hide. And we're seeing like a push and pull. And I think over the next like couple of months, especially as they continue auditing where a lot of this money went, we're going to find out which one of those three they're in. Because, I mean, let's be real, our representatives are all on payroll for somebody. I would rather them just be on the United States' payroll. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to propose a question to everybody, like the panel and everybody in the room. So like go write purple pill and make a comment. Whether or not you think Adam Schiff will be arrested, we'll give a time frame within a month. So, right, Kash Patel, who was confirmed today,
yes,
has said over and over and over again that he believes Adam Schiff is the biggest criminal in Congress's history, and right, like specifically investigating what happened with the Russia hoax, and everything that went there. Do you think that we will see Adam Schiff in handcuffs in the next month? Curious what everybody thinks.
So Gary, real quick, we got over 1,000 people in the room, and we got less than 100 retweets. We got 60 retweets. Can everybody hit that purple pill and retweet the room?
Just retweet, you lazy people.
Yeah, just say something negative about XRP. You'll get 1 billion retweets, Gary. That's all you got to do. Just attack XRP.
And here I am.
Definitely doesn't.
I'm the granddaddy of trolling XRP.
Please retweet, post the room so we can get some speakers up here and asking some questions and have some great conversation. Anyway,
hey Joe,
Brady,
could I ask a question?
Go ahead.
You know, the debates that we used to have about US foreign policy before, like all of the revelations and stuff, has it changed your opinion at all?
Not in the least. Not in the least.
So
I still disagree with your central premise that the Rothschilds are behind everything and evil in the world.
Well, sorry.
There's people above them too.
No, the quote that the US is the largest terrorist state in the world.
Yeah, not even close.
So everything you've seen in US aid.
Yeah, I mean, when we had this discussion, look, the U.S. engages like every major nation in propaganda. The U.S. is the hegemon, right? So it's going to do more just by virtue of the fact that it is, the largest global superpower, right?
I'm talking about the drug trafficking, the human trafficking, the funding terrorist groups. None of that affects you at all. You thought like you were. I never
see. This is the fault. This is the straw man you always throw. I have never said the United States has clean hands and it never does anything wrong. I've never suggested that ever. I know that it has a long history of doing bad things. But what I dispute is that on balance, meaning you take the good with the bad, your suggestion repeatedly the United States is the greatest terrorist organization. Because I think a terrorist organization...
Which country has overthrown illegally more governments in the world than the United States?
Go back to the old Roman Empire. I mean, they overthrew governments.
That's how far you have to go back. I'm talking about.
No, you can go back. I mean, listen.
I'm talking about today. My statement was.
I don't want to occupy this nice conversation we have. I said publicly that if you want to back up that statement, I will have a dedicated space with facts, and we can have fact checkers. I don't even care, because it's absurd to make that statement. You're redefining terrorism to mean anytime a country, anytime a sovereign exerts influence over the world in a geopolitical fashion, that's terrorism.
So funding ISIS, Al Qaeda, that's not terrorism. Would you say it's terrorism when Iran does it?
If they're funding,
the US does it, it's
direct funding of a terrorist organization with a known clear, understanding that it will be used for some act of terrorism to influence others, yeah, that's terrorism. By the way, that's not what the United States did with Al Qaeda. That's not the history, and we can go into how the weapons and arms and things through misguided policy ended up in their hands, going all the way back to the Taliban, who were actually fighting on our behalf.
So,
we weren't
who funds
funding them to engage in terrorism.
Who funds and trains ISIS?
Okay, so again, if you want to go down this path, we can. But I'm just saying, I think this is rude to the room when you do this, because I think it's distracting from an otherwise good conversation.
Is this a bad conversation? Would everyone like to move on?
It's also ignoring all of South America and the overthrows we did.
Yeah,
and brutal murders.
It's just kind of ignorant.
Put in place.
I just find it so disrespectful for people that have been victims, and now we get to reveal it. And
I find it disrespectful.
Yeah, but come on, any other country, Joe, you'd call them terrorists. And when it turns out that it's your country that's doing it, and it's overthrown more, and we're not talking about
the United States has overthrown dictators. The United States have overthrown people
democracies.
That cut babies' throats.
Democracies. How many democracies have you overthrown and replaced with dictators?
Overthrowing countries where they cut babies' throats. Yeah, that's not terrorism. That's called
Hey, Joe,
what about the Ukraine? Babies' throats?
Yeah, Joe, what about the Ukraine? Like, we've poured now hundreds of billions of dollars in. It's led to almost a million deaths.
You see,
a million deaths, Joe.
Yeah, right. And
with our tax dollars, but that's our tax dollars.
There is a certain point at which you need to have truth.
I know you guys all hate America.
Look,
cool,
guys.
The reality is,
no one. I don't hate America. I love America.
The world just wants America to stop doing global terrorism.
It's important to recognize.
And I do too, for the record, I do too. I want the United States to stop doing bad things. And I think we all agree on that, right? But for you to present this, to drive an anti-American agenda from a comparative fashion where you make a bold claim that the United States has done more, the United States has done more for good and freedom and liberty than any other country in the history of the planet.
It's very, listen, if I could say one thing.
I agree with that, Joe.
I think it's disingenuous.
What did we do in Haiti, Joe? Joe, what did we do in Haiti?
Listen, I know everybody's passions are up, but we gotta do one at a time. Like, if
you all who hate America too, you guys can leave. You don't have to stay here, Dark Side. Why don't you go, find another place?
No, you gotta understand, Joe. I love America.
Loving America.
I love America. I just don't love.
We can criticize, guys.
I don't love the Clintons.
Hey guys, I don't think the room could really hear you when you're talking over each other. So you can have this conversation if you'd like, if Gary wishes it to continue. But please, let's not talk over each other, because then nobody really is hearing. So sorry about that. Continue.
Yeah, no, listen, sorry, mute glitch. I'll try to cycle it around to give everybody a chance to get in. But and we had this conversation a little bit earlier, because to tie it back to the previous discussion we were having as well. Right, the color revolutionary stuff that's being revealed, the propaganda, the fact checkers, the censorship, that's the same playbook and infrastructure that they used and weaponized against President Trump. And I think that's why we're getting the exposure of this stuff. And I think it does beg the question. I think it's a fair question, without saying it's anti-American, to question whether or not some of these intelligence operations were acting in good faith, the same way that we as the American people were sold it. I think there is. So I think it's legitimate to question it without being anti-American. But
Dustin,
it does include everything.
Okay, the flaw in Simon's argument is as follows. When you start with the premise of the greatest terrorism organization in the world, or I think he actually said in the history of the world, which is even broader, you have to look at not merely whether they've done bad things, whether they've fomented wars, whether they've toppled dictators, whether they've done illegal actions, anti-humanitarian things. You have to look at what is your definition of terrorism, okay? And if you define terrorism like normal human beings do, it is something to influence a specific political end, right? And you're doing it to instill fear. You're doing some action. If I go and topple a dictator, okay, if I go take out a regime and engage in regime change in Haiti or any country that, for that matter, that's not terrorism. Okay, that's why the argument is flawed. The argument is flawed because he's redefining
you think it's just dictators.
Let me one second, Lord Simon. Hang on a second. I'm almost done. The reason why he's wrong is because he's redefining terrorism to mean any bad thing, any unlawful act, any anti-humanitarian act, and that's not the definition of terrorism.
And real quick, and I'll get it to everybody else. But would you define like putting the world on house arrest and releasing a virus, making people mass? Is that like an act of terrorism?
No, it's not. It's terrible policy. It's awful. It's anti-liberty, but it's not terrorism. No, I don't think that's terrorism at all.
I think that's fair, like definitionally. Simon, did you want to like bounce back? Then we'll go Lucas and Darkside.
Yeah. So just to be clear, so if we're going by the Geneva Convention, the definition of terrorism is the use of violence to a non-combatant in order to achieve political goals. America has approximately 100 different acts of terrorism that is engaged in around the world. Now, what Joe wants you to believe is that it is because America has such high values, superior values, that it is trying to export around the world to export democracy, which is the very same bullshit lie that we're told in order to make us feel good about the acts of terror and the hundreds and millions probably at this point that have died in order to make Joe feel a little bit good about what's happening here. There has been, you go through each of those regime changes, and if you can explain to me how replacing a democracy in Iran and replacing it with a dictator and doing that by covert regime changes is exporting democracy, and how you can go through each of those. You think it's about you're like replacing dictators. The reality is that America would much rather a dictator in charge. And America will select when it cares about dictatorships or democracies based upon the resources that it's trying to rape, steal, and pillage. Now, this isn't about anti-Americanism. This is about Americans realizing what their freedom was built upon in order to have what they have today, and a recognition that the whole world has been terrorized by America as it was by Britain. And if you want to say that you're doing that because you're exporting democracy, then you need to look at each one of those acts and realize that terrorism is a word of what happens when you resist against American terrorism.
Okay, just to be clear, if anyone wants to know one thing that Simon said that's absolutely wrong, just take a quick Google, because I wanted to double check it. The Geneva Conventions do not in any way define terrorism. So whatever definition you read from the Geneva Conventions is not from the Geneva Conventions. There's no such thing. But he didn't know
okay,
that it
what's
involves,
the legal
it involves
definition? You're the lawyer.
It involves,
what's the legal definition? What international law do you use?
I gave you it. I gave you it previously. Okay.
No. The
reality is direct.
Which framework are we using for international law?
All right, wait. Can we avoid arguing about like definitions?
We're not going to argue over definitions, but we're not going to argue over definitions. But it's important for people to understand that his way of presenting this is anything the United States has done, any military, either direct or indirect, that qualifies as terrorism in his mind. So that's important when you're talking about defining the world's greatest terrorists, because we toppled a dictator that, whether it's right or wrong, whether the dictator was an awful dictator, whether he was horrible, whether he was slaughtering
people,
what about a democracy
and replacing it with a dictator?
by
what
Simon's
about the other way around?
By Simon's
what about the other way around? You actually think that you just care about these dictators and human rights?
By Simon's definition. When the United States went in and took out Adolf Hitler, okay,
let Joe finish.
Help the Allies. Yeah, by Simon's definition, when the United States engaged in combat during World War II against the Axis, that was an act of terrorism under Simon's definition. So people need to understand that.
All right, Lucas.
I always default back to World War II.
Let's let Lucas get in here, and like there's a bunch of people, and now Darkside. I know everybody's like fired up, but I want to let other people in on the convo. I think it's interesting. I think it's a discussion worth having. Go ahead, Lucas.
I actually think both of you guys have good points, right? And this is coming from someone whose family lived through the United States toppling, one of those dictators. In the late 40s, the United States basically stopped the spread of communism in Greece, right? So there was a civil war my grandfather lived through. And so it's not all bad. It's not all good. I don't think, but here's the thing. It's the same thing. We're demonizing America or demonizing the other side. At the end of the day, it's a mixed bag. And you have to remember the context in which we exist when there are other powers that will do the same, if not worse. So while I don't think it's okay to excuse the pillaging and raping you speak of, because yes, it has absolutely been for for profit in a lot of ways. We also have to look at who else is in the room with us right now. And I personally believe in American exceptionalism. I believe that America, despite its many flaws, okay, let's preface that statement, is still the best country on planet Earth and deserves to be the people, the people who run things. Like, we have better culture, we have better people. I believe that our ideals need to be spread, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
All right, go ahead, Dark Side.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that, I love America with a passion. Right? This country's provided me with so many opportunities. I can't say thank you enough. That being said, it is my duty as a citizen to speak up when my government is committing atrocities. So whether that's Haiti, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's Libya, whether that's Iraq, whether that's Gaza, wherever it is, if I believe my country's doing wrong, I have a responsibility to say something. That doesn't mean that I hate my country. That means that I love my country. Men are flawed. Governments are flawed. I mean, I can't, like, whether we're talking about Victoria Nuland or Hillary Clinton or whoever else was involved in just heinous acts that our government has taken place in or sponsored, then we're responsible. But as a citizenry, it's our job to stand up and say, no more, enough. Right. So that's where I stand on this. And that doesn't mean I don't love my country. I love this country. That's why I'm saying something. And the mere fact that for the last, I don't know, what has it been, 8 years up until November, we were afraid to talk up. Many Americans were afraid to speak up, be canceled, be audited by the IRS, be tortured by our government, be sent to January 6th prison. Like, that says so much, because as citizens, it's our duty, our responsibility to stand up and say no more. So anyway, I love this country. I respect where Joe's coming from. I respect where Simon's coming from. But it is our duty to say no more when our government does wrong. Thanks.
And I think it's okay to criticize. Like, the democracy is only upheld by, the ability to criticize the people in power. And it's not one group or institution specifically that's doing any of this. Remember, it's like there's a lot of things going on at once, but we need to be able to have these conversations without hating each other. So, like, that's like what I want to drive across.
You tell me why.
Luke, let's just talk about that, because this is the issue. This is the issue, right? Hang on, Simon. This is the issue.
Joe, you
right
haven't
here.
let me. You haven't let me.
Yeah, you can respond to everything I say. This is the clear issue. In Dark Side, I actually agree with everything you said. Nobody wants to support bad actions from our government. We have a moral responsibility to speak up and tell the truth, right? I completely agree with everything you said. The difference is certain people come into these rooms and they push this anti-American agenda, which they will make the United States out to be the great Satan. And I've heard people say that are on the stage, that it is the great Satan that, is destroying the planet and is destroying everything, and that we're the only bad actor in the world, when it's far more complicated and nuanced than that. So if you come up here and you can criticize specific conduct, that's far more productive than driving some ideological goal of painting one as the big bad in the world, when it's a complex world with many bad actors.
So who does that, by the way? If you're talking about me, I don't think I've ever called it.
You literally said it's the greatest terrorist organization in the history of the world. I agree with that. You said it was the greatest terrorist organization in the history of the world.
But I didn't say it's Satan. You just made up all that stuff, and that was an emotional response due to your patriotism.
You have said on Spaces that the United States is the great Satan. I've heard it. I can get people in here to attribute.
The great satanic. What did you say?
Great Satan. You've said it's the great Satan.
You won't find that. That word's never come out of my words.
You were on a space with me, and you said it was the world's greatest terrorist organization.
Yes,
I tweeted it out.
Yes, I said terrorist state. I didn't say Satan. You're making up words.
No, you said the greatest terrorist organization in the history of the world.
But it is, though. It actually is. I think we have to recognize that it is.
Wait, Lucas, please. Let's let Simon go.
So Joe, ask me today. I'm talking about today. If you want to go further back, we can go further back. There is democracy after democracy that has been replaced with dictatorship after dictatorship. But if you want to go at one today, why right now, an organization that was trained and funded in order to, ISIS, now that group which destabilized Syria, now what is currently being occupied in Syria right now as we speak? The oil and the wheat. Who's occupying it? The Kurds. Who are the Kurds? A communist ideology that is looking after it because they are funded and weaponized by America and Turkey. America is currently stealing Syria's oil and Syria's wheat in order to protect and train and militarize a communist, Marxist, leftist ideology. I could go through example after example after example. Joe, are you happy with the fact that America is supporting communist ideologies and stealing oil and wheat in Syria in order to inflict so much punishment?
Of course not. I don't know why you
But
think I
you're
would be.
saying that it's just about democracy. You're toppling dictators. It's
No,
just,
I said the United States has done that in the past.
You have been fed on
I don't know
on USA propaganda for a long time, Jay.
I literally started out with saying I agreed with Darkside's criticism, and there are many such examples over the last numerous years of the United States doing crappy, illegal things that are not in line with my values. And I think there's no problem in speaking out about it. But guess what? Let me finish. Darkside doesn't start the conversation with these conclusory statements from an opinion-based standpoint, where you're trying to paint one country out as with a label, which, by the way, it doesn't actually serve your purpose. If you were truly trying to affect some sort of reform or a change in policy, you don't need to label things as terrorist organizations, which, by the way, it's a terrible label.
But who does that?
Shows your animus.
So
are
you an American
really
trying to say that there's a problem with labeling groups as terrorism in order to achieve policy? The hubris of what you're saying.
There is a problem. There is a problem.
Literally, you are in the middle of funding a genocide right now that has led to 30,000 orphans. That is literally
you're using rhetoric.
All right, I'm gonna butt in. I've had my hand up for like 30 minutes.
It's unbelievable. The use of the word terrorism was actually created in order to justify.
Because you guys are just all over the place. Here's a simple fact. Okay, this is an example from recently, yesterday, I believe. Right, Trump just declared that 13 cartel organizations are terrorist organizations. Okay. I don't think any of us would really argue that. But if that's the case, who was working with those terrorist organizations? Who got caught? The banks. Who else works with them? Our federal government. Who banked Pablo Escobar before they took him down? We did. We took him down when we decided we were done and we wanted to take it over. So, and give it to somebody else, right? So I'm not going to say one way or the other that the U.S. is a terrorist organization, because that's not fair, because that implies all of us. But our tax money is definitely going places it shouldn't, and it's helping with things that it shouldn't. And if you go back to Afghanistan, I have tons of people in the military I know, Marines especially, that guarded the poppy fields that they were exporting out. So, I mean, we are part of the fucking problem. You can't argue that. And it doesn't mean that we're all terrorists, but it definitely means that we're not doing the right things. We're doing things for money. Sometimes we think it's for the greater good. Things are super complicated, right? But it doesn't change the fact that we are definitely bringing Trump in to fix this, because it is wrong and it's not okay. And it doesn't matter why you think it's okay. It doesn't matter any of that. And the other thing is, central banks have gone everywhere we fucking invaded. We're doing it for the bank. We're not doing it for fucking America. We're not doing this shit for you and me. It doesn't benefit us at all. All the money goes elsewhere. So I don't understand how you can sit here and defend it the way you are. Not that you're incorrect.
Can I comment on that?
If
I may,
my point.
If I may comment, in all of my talks, and maybe an emotional response came there because it was triggering to hear what Joe says after so much death and destruction, and having witnessed it and been around people that activists, that are actually against this stuff. I'm always talking about, in fact, I'm more specific than the US government. I list the exact institutions that construct the deep state, and I never think that it's Americans. You know why? Because it ain't working very well for Americans right now. Look at all the stats across the board. Like, Americans are terrorized by these policies just as much as other organizations as well. So if this is coming across that I'm saying Americans are evil, I'm saying that there is a construct which the British Empire passed over to the American Empire, which is engaging in more terrorist acts than any other country in the world, and is leading to a lot of death and destruction. And right now is a moment for truth, because without truth, there can be no peace. And I am absolutely delighted with what the Trump administration and everyone is releasing, because now I thought this is a moment to recognize what the problem is, retreat, accept it, and we can actually move to a better place. But if we want to cover it up in propaganda, saying that we're exporting democracies and we're overthrowing dictators, then there needs to be a lot more study in what is actually happening here.
Well, in that argument, Simon, like, I wasn't attacking you on the calling all American citizens. I was just using that as a generality. I think all of you guys have half truths here. I think you guys all have good points, but I think you're not all portraying your message the way you maybe try to. But in reality, we are in a massive fucking situation that is a big deal, and we are a huge fucking part of all the world's problems, and we're causing a lot of this to happen. So, I mean, Simon's not incorrect in his thesis, but he's wrong in what he's saying and how he's labeling it, and maybe the title, right? But I think Simon's pretty spot on about a lot of this shit. And I think the other side of it, I couldn't see who was talking. I guess Jay, they keep saying you had a lot of great points too. But at the end of the day, guys, like, we brought these people in, we brought cash in because we do have a rogue government. They are not working for the people. They are doing things that are against anything we would ever stand for, and none of us are proud of it. And that's why we did this. So, there's a lot of fucking issues going on. Censoring was a big one, right? Like, couldn't even speak up against half this shit. Get kicked off all the platforms, right? Like, Elon did a good job buying that. Does he have all good intentions? I don't know. We'll see. But it seems pretty good to me at this point. And I think that we need to start accepting the fact that we have done a lot of bad things, and our tax money has been funneled through. And I don't care if it went through NGOs or other countries, because you damn well all know, if you've done any business in this world, that things are coordinated properly. And even if they tell us one thing, things behind closed doors are being said differently. And these things are planned out. Like, it's not accidents. These aren't like, oh shit, oops, they got the guns. No, motherfucker, they gave them the guns. It was through this guy to this guy to this guy. And it was all on purpose. So to think anything else, it's all going to come out, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it. And you're going to see that we are the fucking problem. That's why we're trying to fix it, because there should be peace and there shouldn't be all this bullshit. We run the drugs. We are the top of the fucking chain there. So I don't know. To me, it's just like, some of these points are pretty moot. Who cares if you want to define us as terrorists or not? We've defined new terrorists, and in essence, it literally involves like a lot of the government and a lot of fucking big institutions that are involved in this. So who knows what they're doing besides
brother.
I
hear you. In general, I'll just tell you. In general, it's stupid to label things as terrorists because it's an amorphous term. It's just like they named the January 6ers terrorists, right? They name anybody that's just against what you believe is a terrorist. It's a bad argument. It's a bad framing. And people that make the comment, United States is the greatest terrorist organization, they should refrain from doing so. And that was my.
Well, Joe, are you okay calling a resistance against occupation and genocide a terrorist group? Because you do it every day.
It's a disingenuous take.
I do it every day. When I get up.
Well,
on
sorry,
the
I'm talking about. Sorry, your country does it every day.
If you said I did it, is it me or my country, or is the country or people?
Do you use the word terrorism?
I try not to.
Well, I hear you use the word terrorism. Do you use the word terrorism?
You hear me use it? Where do I use it?
Hey guys, if I may jump in for a second, okay? To quote JFK.
Okay, listen, we're not doing the game of like who can unmic fastest gets to like go first. Like, it's been a like good flowing discussion, but like, right, if we play that game, everybody gets talked over. Joa was next. Go ahead, Joa.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, look, it's just a broken model, right? Like, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I know, Joe, you say that we removed dictators and put in democracies. No, we actually did the opposite. If you look at all the people that we supported, like in Chile, we removed the democratic socialists and we put in a dictator who killed people. In Argentina, we removed the democracy, put in a military dictator who killed people. In Cuba, we removed the democracy and we put in a dictator who killed people. Like, it was a model, and it's not a model that helps Americans. So when you call American terrorists, yeah, I don't want to call American terrorists, although the actions are similar to those of other countries that we call terrorists. But we've removed democracies, put in dictators. They don't care who we put in. We just want to ensure that the model of the Fed keeps working the way it is continues to function. And in the 90s, when Alan Greenspan goes with Clinton, and all of a sudden there's this thing with the Middle East. Even prior to 9/11, there was already talks about going to the Middle East. We transported the model of what we did in South America now to the Middle East, and now we're doing the same thing there. And the only reason I voted for Trump is because hopefully I knew that if I voted for the Democrats, the model was going to be repeated, which is continue doing what we've always done. And hopefully Trump goes in and just breaks shit. That's all I want him to do. I don't even need him to fix it. I just need him to break it so someone else can fix it or he can fix it. I don't care. But this model for decades of removing people from power to continue the Fed's organization and the way that it works is broken. It's bad. It kills people. I'm not for it, and it does nothing for the American people except transfer money to the rich.
Well,
That's all it does. It hurts the middleman.
So I'd like to try to like just contain the discussion a little bit so we don't get into like old history by pointing out that like Norm Eisen and the Color Revolutionary Playbook is currently right. Like Ukraine, you can go back to 2014 and like the intelligence operations there. Brazil with Lula and what happened there, I believe, is another right. When you look at who was on the ground when it happened, I don't think this is an old playbook. I think I want to focus on the new playbook because I think the operators are still active, right? Like,
but Dustin, the new playbook is crypto. If you listen to, I forget what that the Pulitzer Prize, the Nobel Prize winning economist was, who said we will never have good money if money is controlled by the government, right? And I believe that ever since I heard that in college.
Right, but
you have to get money out of the government.
Wait, real quick, Joe. So you're talking about the solutions. I'm talking about the underlying shit that is still overthrowing countries and to the deep state and like the broader, I'll say, globalist agenda, right? And we are right now using this color revolution playbook that includes right propaganda, impeachment, the buying of officials. And it's the exact same playbook that they weaponized to try to attack Trump during his first term, which is why I think he's dismantling.
Now, and I'm hoping that this exposure is for people like Joe to recognize we need to see the pattern. We are not we're not exporting democracy. We're trying to prop up the dollar artificially. And Ukraine is the perfect example. It's the perfect example. I think 1 million Ukrainians have died in order to wage a war between Europe and America so that America and Putin and MBS can negotiate exactly who's going to get the world's energy and how it's actually going to be constructed. It's being done as we speak.
Yeah, so they can't transport LNG. That's basically what this whole war is about, is so that Russia cannot link up to Belt and Road to transport LNG. That's all it is.
And it's rare earths in order to be able to get those chips to power artificial intelligence. It's happening as we speak.
Well, and if I can bring this back, can I bring this back to Bitcoin let's bring it back to Bitcoin for 1 second, right? Like when I started on the Bitcoin journey back in 2013, admittedly, I was on a monetary journey, right? I saw the hope and promise of making more money and what I assumed would become a Hunt Brother type corner operation. That has transcended into a spiritual journey that I think can save the world. So, Joa made a wonderful point that we need to separate state and money. Bitcoin does that. Further, the transparency of the Bitcoin ledger provides us the ability to give the government a public wallet by which we pay into, and we can see where every single dollar goes to. That is the solution to this problem. Bitcoin fixes this, right? We need to embrace the concept that Bitcoin can solve our problems, right? And I hope, I pray that this administration will go that route, right? That we go to a level of transparency and light that we've never seen before in the United States, such that we can make sure that the U.S. Hard-earned taxpayer money is not going to destabilize and kill and maim and injure, but quite the opposite, is going to do good around the world. And that's the promise of Bitcoin. So we got a lot of people in this room. You need to understand there's hope out there. It's not all death and despair, right? We are on the verge of a new world. Things can get better, and Bitcoin can fix this. So yeah, I just
Hey,
want
the
to
dark
make
side,
that point.
the
Go
only
ahead, Joe.
conflict we would need to worry about if Bitcoin was the reserve is India and Pakistan. All the other ones have to do with the dollar, right? India and Pakistan, which I don't think is really a big risk, are the only conflict that we're like, okay, nuclear war could break out. That's the only one. All the other ones would go away. The whole thing with North Korea would go away. The thing going on with China and Russia would go away. These things would go away, right?
See,
It's about
yeah.
saving us.
The only thing that I take exception with what you said, Darkside, because I agree that decentralized currency and Bitcoin fixes this, right? Like in massive ways that we haven't even thought about. I also think that like radical transparency, right? Like put the government on chain and being able to track where all of this money flow goes cuts a lot of this bad stuff off. But where I think I'm maybe more America first is that I think good intentions of like, yes, we're going to use we're going to spread our good intentions all over the world is a no-win situation for us, which is right. I don't think Joe's entirely wrong. I don't think that a lot of this was outside of some exceptions, Victoria Nuland, the CIA, right? There are elements that have done nefarious shit for all kinds of evil purposes for a long time. But there's also an element of the people who excused it, who thought that they were doing something good and spreading something good in the world. And really what that's the vehicle that's used and exploited. And it puts us as Americans in no one's situation. Like we've injected ourselves into conflicts and into areas that no matter what happens, we're seen as the bad guy. No matter which team wins, we lose because we backed both sides and we gain no real benefit out of it. So like for me, like I'm all for like just spreading this by doing it ourselves and being the like shining hill and spreading the example. Not necessarily like I'm done sending my resources or my children to go fight in other wars and do other shit. Like fucking build the only nation building I think we need to do for a long time is right here in America.
Amen, brother. Can I jump in now? Or actually, Mike put his hand up first. He hasn't spoken. Mike, brother, go ahead.
All right, I appreciate that. Well, I would just say that all the terrorism talk could probably be thwarted by a simple idiom of the
Mike Mac is in the room.
And there it goes.
Come on in, baby.
Only I can bring Gary Cardone out of hibernation. That's a talent. I think that
Let's go.
shouldn't be overlooked. Gary, before I make my terrorism statement real quick, I just want to say, brother, I saw your post earlier and I sent you a text. And I have to say that I was ashamed at the way that a lot of people responded to what you said. I thought it was a lot of those comments they made to you were nasty and vile, and I didn't like it. So I just want to say that. And
XRP is a terrorist organization.
You could say XRP is a terrorist organization, and I think that'll be okay. I think Simon and Darkside would have no problem with unequivocally saying that XRP is a terrorist organization and Guarding House is literally terrorizing the president, trying to be on the crypto board. So yeah, I think we could.
Well, it does make crime cheaper for banks.
There we go. Okay, so I just want to say this: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I think it's perspective. Look, Japan 1945 probably thought we were a terrorist organization. Japan in 2025 probably thinks we're one of its greatest allies. But I do, and we can all. It is kind of like the chart: you zoom in or zoom out. The macro, I think we could label countries and situations as terrorist operatives, but I'm like Dustin just said, I'm totally opposed to us going and rebuilding nations. So if we have a party in the United States, let's say, that wants to go and stimulate this war in Ukraine, I would say, I think a lot of us look at it like that is a bad situation, and we see them like that. But if, let's say, my party says, we do not want to fund that war. We do not want to continue this. Then the question is if the United States is a terrorist organization, can't we zoom in a little bit more and find out a little bit more micro and find out what is the cause of the terrorism that is coming from the United States? Because it ain't me, because I don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? But it is my, but it is my government, but it's not my entire government, right? It's only a part of my government that is doing that. So look, I think, all fantastic empires fall. So
It's
maybe
mainly
when
the
United,
CIA, just so you know.
well, I can't. I'm not going to say any 3-letter names here. I don't want them to take away my Wednesday show.
Simon is correct, but go ahead, finish your thought, Mike.
But let me just say this real fast. I don't look. I think Bitcoin solves a lot of issues, but it doesn't solve the power and the hubris and the being a man issue, right? So if Bitcoin fixes something, then there's another thing that's going to pop up, and the world is a competition. And as of now, the victor, to the victor goes the spoils. I mean, that's bad or good. That is the way it is right now.
All right, so Prometheus, I'm gonna let you go, right? But don't worry, I got the moderation, bro. I know you're eager. But Mike, always good to see you. I did not get my coded secret message from Ian. I was very disappointed. I don't know what happened there.
Well, he said I told him to tell you you're gay. So not a shocking secret message.
Nobody's interested in your wet dreams, Mike. Come on, bro.
It's not all the time. It's just occasionally. That's fine.
No, love it. So here's and again, I just want to be clear. I've spent a lot of time talking with Simon over all these years. Simon is not representing that this is something that we have a choice over. This kind of nefarious intelligence spending and the geopolitical shenanigans and foreign aid, all the other bullshit. I've never heard Simon be like, yes, this is what the Americans choose. In fact, we don't have a choice. In fact, no matter who we choose, right, that is the one consistent theme and has been until President Trump. And again, I think that's largely a result of the fact that they picked a fight and used this playbook and this infrastructure with the impeachment, with the color revolution, with the propaganda through Reuters and Politico, all the shit we did everywhere else. Of course, they brought that playbook home in order to try to keep power and keep Donald Trump in check or remove him through a color revolution. And I think that's why we're getting the exposure. I think it's a healthy thing for us to expose it to the top level. And I think what Simon's doing, and again, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but one of the reasons I don't take the kind of personal offense that I think Joe takes with how Simon frames it, I think Simon wants it to be jarring to us because you have to be jarred in order to recognize just how fucking awful a lot of this shit has been, right? So I've always taken it's not as Simon being like, yes, you are these bad, evil fucking people. America is terrible. I've never taken it that way. I've taken it as you need to look at how you define others and how you fit in those definitions, which is why I think I've always taken it a little differently than Joe has. My personal take on it. But go ahead, Prometheus.
Thank you, Dustin. And by the way, everyone here in the room, please retweet this space. This is a deep conversation we are having. You don't get conversations like this in many other rooms. Appreciate you, Gary. Appreciate you, Dustin, Simon, Joa, Mike, everybody who's contributed here tonight. Guys, this is an authentic conversation, an honest conversation about exactly what is really going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle, but I think it's highly relevant because it points towards, I believe, the true solution, which I think deep down we're all looking for, which is how do we create a cohesive, prosperous, amazing world, right? I think that's something we can all get behind. Nobody, cramping on anybody else's other sovereignty, but the government by the people for the people. How do we achieve that, right? And so I believe that Donald Trump is a true anomaly to the system. He does not represent your typical politician by any means. You'll see him talking about going to Washington 17 times. He always says that, oh, I've been to Washington 17 times. Why does he say that, huh? Like, I think we need to have an honest conversation about this. Why did we see a military fence put up around Congress in 2021 when supposedly Joe Biden, the actor Joe Biden, may I add, because was that really him? His face features didn't really match with the original Joe Biden. Show up on stage. Like it's we have to have this conversation. So in the purple pill, I've linked QPost 138, and by the way, you can't link QPost even on X. It's not as free as we've been told, although I very much appreciate Elon, have had many conversations with him, have called him out on this sometimes. But we're not truly a free speech platform fully here just yet. But in QPost 138, it talks about all the different central banks, okay, including mentioning of the United States Federal Reserve. All right. I believe Donald Trump, didn't just run accidentally. I believe he was asked to run. I believe that there is a strong military alliance that actually spans more than the United States around the world. What's my evidence for this? In the space of 6 months, okay, between 2021 and 2022, you had the Japanese government, the Dutch government, the British government under Boris Johnson, Jacinda Ardern's government, all suddenly collapse and lockdowns around the world suddenly end. Okay, we all remember what it was like going through 2020. That was a giant move by the same people Simon has been identifying, Dustin's been identifying, like the very people that JFK mentioned when he gave his last speech, right? The very word secrecy is repugnant to a true a republic, right? There is a group that has acquired vast military resources, financial resources, and is financing, all the, like, he exposed it 1 week before he got shot, right? I believe that there was a military around him that since has been working on a 50-year plan, which has been stated by the Anon community. There's a difference between the Q posts and the Anons who've been following the Q posts, okay? And this is significant because if we don't talk about the truth as it is, the naked truth, we won't get to the bottom of the rot that is destroying our world. Okay, it's no one single nation. Okay, we're dealing with a globalist international banking terror cabal. Okay, which is run by the most ugly people. Okay, who do the worst things to children. A lot of the child trafficking that's gone on at the southern border, that, so much of this stuff, Hollywood, they're behind it all, folks. Okay, but there is a way. I'm telling you, there is a way. And I'm telling you, it not only is there a way, it is prophesied that these people will fall. Okay, in scripture, these people are referred to as mystery Babylon. Now, in Second Esdras, and I'm going to land with this point here. In Second Esdras, there is the vision of the eagle. Let me just read to you this one line. This was written hundreds of years ago before America came to pass. Listen to this. On the second night, I had a dream. I saw rising from the sea an eagle that had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. How many number of colonies did you guys have? Oh, how many heads of government do you have? The legislative, the judicial, and yeah. No, I'm going here, bro, because this is the way, okay? The solution is not in a person, it's not in a government, it's not in a business. It is in the Lord Jesus Christ. And that is who we need to actually turn to in this midnight hour and rally the body of Christ world over to take down this great cabal. With that, I'll end.
All right. I appreciate it. People should look into it. I'm down to have that broader discussion, although I think sometimes it's a little bit off, like, key for, like, the room that we're in. And, like, so some of those discussions will happen when they're supposed to happen, right? And but people should look in. The only thing I'll add, anything that tells you that there is somebody else behind the scenes fixing all of your problems is a psyop, right? So, like, just know, and there could be good parts and bad parts, but no one is going to fix this if we don't fix it, right? So just always keep that in your mind, that there is no white knight coming to, like, save everybody. It's up to us.
Hey, Dustin, let me just bounce in here. I haven't been following you guys. I spent a little time with my kids. I'm reading something here. Rand Paul just discovered $4.8 million in Ukraine for social media influencers from U.S. taxpayers. Wow. 4.8 million in Ukraine just for social media influencers. Amazing. The waste we're going to find here. What are you guys coming up with? What's the topic here? Bring me up to speed, please.
It got heated.
Oh, it's the cabal, Gary.
We had a Joe Simon battle over, right? Like, and then we dove into like U.S. secret operations and the undercutting of just about everything. Gary, you know what list I want? I want to know which fucking social media people got that money.
Yeah,
right. Like
me too.
I'm as interested in that list as I am the Epstein list. Like I don't think I'm gonna be hugely surprised to find out like a bunch of like rich politicians and like Bill Clinton and like that network was involved in Epstein. Frankly, I kind of assume they're all guilty until proven otherwise. But I'm really curious about who's on those fucking like who was on the take to propagandize us, because we've had a lot of weird shit going on as far as like some of the personalities that we've got to know in Spaces have like been revealed to be completely made up recently.
Oh, for sure, buddy. I mean, for sure. I think people, I don't see people validating people enough here. I mean, anyway, totally agree. Where did that money go to? You're going to find so much money has gone to mainstream media, which we all know, but it's just going to be the final nail in CNN's coffin.
Well, right, like take the Krasensteins or all of these accounts that are beating the war drums, Ukraine, Russia. Like how many of those people are literally on the page to push those messages out? That's what I want to know. And those people should be fucking shunned from like serious, polite discussions like the ones we have in here.
And you know what's so frustrating about that? Like, you know, I spent like the rest of us, which are actually standing up for like things we really believe in, and we've just been spending all this time arguing against like paid agents that are literally just there in order to spread lies and deceit. And like, and that's just is so infuriating that people have invested so much time in just trying to spread truth, and you're literally just debating an agent. I can't imagine how many like I've been debating over the last like couple of years.
And we might be debating an agent right now. I mean, the way that you've come off before the election going against Trump the way you have, and the way that you demoralized America with your message. I mean, you basically said Trump's going to get the world in a war before he was elected. And I've questioned your authenticity before the election. It's rather, I don't know.
Joe, how much time have you spent on Spaces with me?
Simon is not an agent.
Simon convinced me.
I convinced Joe
to
vote for
turn
Trump.
back. He turned to Trump, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I
Simon's the one who
literally did
convinced
that.
me, to
If
be
you go
honest.
through all of my Bitcoin Hard Talk episodes, every Friday, I was saying the importance of the things that I will call Trump out on, but why everybody absolutely must vote for Trump.
I'll add this, Andrew, just real quick, which is like I think I've gotten pretty good at spotting the agents, right? Like over all these years. I still miss sometimes, admittedly so. But the difference isn't that like they have a differing opinion or they present things that, like I said, with Simon's in particular, like I see the value in the way he is abrasive about calling out a bunch of the shit that the US has done and making people really wrestle and grapple with like that. The difference though is like I've heard Simon and spent dozens of hours with Simon, like discussing it openly, where like he will combatively go back and forth. You don't see these agents. They are talking points machines. They are the NPC characters who just like repeat the line over and over and over again. They're not, you don't see them engage in kind of the robust discussion usually. So, right, I think it's unfounded against Simon. Personal take.
Yeah,
Don't know yet.
I will vouch for that. Simon has.
Demetrius, if you don't mind, if you could take a little backseat for a second. I mean, I don't know Simon, but I do know that I never heard him discredit the Democrats or really harp on Kamala Harris. So I'll leave it at that.
Oh
I mean,
my God.
I came up here to talk
Gary,
about
is
Cash.
that true?
I
Gary,
came
is
up
that
here to
true?
talk about Cash Patel.
I've heard him
And
trash
guys
both those cats.
I cannot
Okay, good.
imagine. I cannot imagine a world. We would be in World War III if we had Kamala Harris right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, Andrew, I've not. That's not been my experience, bro. But
All right.
he'll.
I mean, I was upset because he was dissing Trump the whole time before the election. So I'll leave that where it made
Yeah,
me. I just wanted to have a couple comments on Cash.
but I think he was, and I think he rightly was like, hey, show me let's verify. I agree, verify. And I heard him tonight say that he's done an exceptional job. So chill out, man. We're good. If he's in my space and he's talking this much, I can pretty much hope that it's a legit guy. But on this agent thing, I think there's a lot of those play. I've seen conversations being had. I watched them, and I would swear that I am talking to a professional debater, and they usually come in the cloaks. This is just my observation. Lawyers, consultants, historians, well-studied people with kind of, I don't know, kind of interesting backgrounds. I don't know if you guys have noticed the same thing, but I don't. Are you guys suggesting they're actual?
Yeah, I've noticed it.
Well, wait. Can you imagine? So, right, like the other thing I know about these social media people is that they are cheap prostitutes, right? So,
Yeah.
like, if Rand Paul uncovered, what'd you say it was, 4.8 million?
Yeah,
Like
just
that,
in Ukraine social media.
dude, that is a lot of social media prostitution. That's like Hunter Biden levels, like hiring social media hookers.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine what's going on here.
Well,
I think part of the issue is because I'm not American, so naturally, when someone attacks your country, you're going to be on the defense, especially a British person with all the crimes of my government. So I think that's part of it, but I can't change who I am, and all I can do is call out what I believe will make the world a better place.
Proud to have you as a fellow Brit on stage, brother.
I'll just add this. I have always found Simon to be value add in any conversation I've had, and to be authentic and genuine in the positions that he presents, right? And dude has a bigger brain.
Dustin, maybe he has him confused with me because I hate Trump, but I did vote for him. So maybe he's thinking of me. I don't know.
No, that could be a mix up. Like Joe is definitely an off, right? We know you're on the tape.
100%.
Anyway, Andrew, go ahead and make your point about Cash.
Thank you, Dustin. And I will say, like Gary, Dustin, I respect you guys immensely. And Mike Mack always gets me a shout out. I mean, you guys are down to earth, genuine people, and I do love that. And I agree with 99% of what you all four of you say. So I really appreciate that. I mean, we're on a new day of patriotism here. Like, we just don't give. I'm not going to swear, but we just don't care anymore about the critics. We don't care about the Europeans. We don't care about the people in Australia giving their guns up. We don't care about New Zealand. We don't care. This is the United States, America first, and we're going forward like at a full speed tilt. Like, it doesn't even matter what anybody else thinks in the world. We're going to do the American thing at Gulf of America. I mean, the list goes on. But I actually just want to come up here. Few small points with Cash. It's awesome. The FBI revamped. Some of us, we've been under scrutiny. We think the FBI has been listening for the last 4 years just because we were at J6. And some of us have had the FBI talk to us in person and try to get in your phone and try to maybe, get you in a lie. You don't know where they're going to go. But there's a new Cash Patel is going to take over the FBI, and he's going to do some serious stuff. And I actually wanted to come up here and just say it's awesome because we don't have to be in fear anymore. Now these other blanks, they're in fear. They're the ones that are going to be under scrutiny. They're the ones that might think that their phone's watching them for the last 4 years, which they probably have been watching us because we've been listed as terrorists. So they may have been looking at us through the phones and the rest of it. We have no idea. I know that for certain that I've probably been caught up in a dragnet warrant because I was around the Capitol on that day, January 6th. We've been tortured and just mentally tortured. Some people physically tortured in jail, in prisons. Cash Patel, it's a whole new dawn. It's a whole new dawn of patriotism. We're not scared anymore. We're not putting up with it. And
Andrew, Andrew, with my question earlier, do you think we see within a month Adam Schiff in handcuffs? And by the way, you guys, I have Gary, Mary, I got to turn it over. I have to take this. I've got an important call. It'll probably only take a couple minutes.
Dustin, thank you. I will say that we do see arrests, and I hope we see arrests of governors and mayors of breaking federal law for immigration. But you know, we'll leave it there. I appreciate it, Gary,
Andrew,
Justin, Michael.
Andrew, I just want to ask you a quick question. If you think about this, this is a good thing about Patel. If you remember, Cash Patel, before he took on that Nunes investigation, right? He was not a Trump guy, right? He was a neutral, no political. Like, he didn't have anything to do with that kind of stuff. And it was after he got done doing his research and going through all the stuff, that's when he started backing Trump. You know what I'm saying? Because the evidence was so clear about what they were doing behind the scenes to destroy this dude. And think about it. Bro, do you know, does anybody in here, I mean, most people in here probably heard of it, but when's the last time you've seen Tiffany Trump? Never. What's the last thing you heard about her? Nothing. They've had 8 years to destroy this cat, and you're telling me you can at least get his kids? A Tiffany Trump, you can't get something? Like, this dude has been put through the ringer, and now I don't want to say it's payback time because I don't think he's doing this for payback. But
it's payback time. Sorry, go ahead.
I do think there is going to be a little bit of payback, but justice-wise, not necessarily with ego and with you know, a conviction of like, I'm going to do this to hurt someone, but it's going to be justice, I think, and I'm looking forward to it.
Do you take hands, or can people just talk?
Go ahead, bro.
Just talk.
Okay, yeah, I just a couple points I just want to make. You know, one thing I think is really important is to get rid of hearsay and speculation. You know, the 4 C's, I call them: crimes, case, court, conviction. That's what matters. You can sit there and speculate, and everybody goes side. Go down. There's you know, and another thing, everybody's got to grow up, in the sense of acknowledge what the heck's happened. You know, when we went into Iraq, everybody was, yeah, let's go for it. And I was like, this is insane. These guys have nothing to do with it. Well, all those people that were flag waving, and, you know, they were all the ones that had the target on their back as local, this, that. So the idea of like, now is the time to retribution, and, you know, I think is stupid and short-sighted. And I think you're going to screw yourself if you go with emotions. And it's time to get very disciplined and to really, you know, go down ways that are not speculative and for real. And if, you know, there's, you don't know what the future is. And if you allow your emotions to take you into the future and you do stupid stuff, you win stupid prizes.
John, there's no way on September 12th of 2001 that anybody in this country had any idea about what we were doing in Iraq. Everybody was.
Well, I did.
Based on what?
I did.
Based
It
on
all, because listen, I'm not a smart. I'm not a
Specifically.
smart guy, because I read about the Sunnis and Shiites, and I read about the borders that were created artificially in World War I. And I said, and I read just a little bit, and I found out, hey, this is all these are nomadic tribes for thousands of years that went from North Africa to the Middle East, and this is all artificial boundaries. And if you let the tough guy out, it's going to go to hell. And I figured that out easily, and I'm not smart.
Well, okay. With the evidence at the time, and granted, we all look back at it now, is, yeah, we were deceived now. But that's because the evidence and the things that we know now we know none of us had access to that.
You deceived yourselves. You deceived yourselves.
That's idiotic, man. Nobody deceived themselves. Everybody put their flag up because we just got our ass kicked. Now, we thought we knew who it was, and we did not, and it was not. And it turns out that it's not what we thought it was, right? And we get that. A lot of us have the wherewithal to go back and say that I was deceived, and I thought one thing, and now I know something different. But for anybody to go back and say that on September 12th, you were the one standing up when everybody else had the freaking flags on the back of their car, and you were the one saying, no, it's the Sunnis and the Shiites. We need to respect their borders. That's ludicrous. Nobody did that.
I got the shit kicked out of me for knowing what was going on.
But to be fair, you're an exception. This undermines the intelligence that has been used to deceive us all. Like, we're talking about psychological operations, psyops here, where deliberately this is to destroy the human psyche, like to pit enemy against enemy, divide and conquer. These psyops, like, there's a reason why there's, the world is in tragedy right now. Like, suicides is at record highs, like mental illness is at record highs. We are about to cool down, and we're about to be healed with truth. And these were you're talking about the highest level of psyops in order to really pit us against each other, hate each other, and be so confused about what's actually happening. I never,
man.
Exactly.
Yes,
I never imagined in my wildest dreams that, like, ISIS would be created and they'd be willing to, you would actually have intelligence agencies that are willing to actually, like, kill each other in order to achieve a political goal. I thought that was an absolute wild conspiracy theory, but it turns out it's true.
Yeah. And don't forget COVID. Greatest. I mean, that's everyone that had anything to do with that needs to stay in prison for the rest of their lives. Okay. If you were like, I'm so harsh on this because I can't imagine, one, having encouraged my children to take it. Wow. I don't know what I would do with myself. Two, if I had taken it, I'm just so empathetic with, like, it. I have to be worried. I have to be worried almost every day. Hey, what the fuck did they give me? I mean, I'd be researching how to get that shit out of me so fast. It's the greatest crime on humanity. That's why I like why anyone, no, how anyone could be okay with not pushing for more and more and more the ultimate transparency. And until then, like, hey, it's clear that we're just a ruleless society. So let's just stop doing whatever's been normal. I think this has to go all the way. I'm actually hopeful, and I think our voice can be so loud now. This is what we wanted, and we're going to know the enemy. The cool thing, there's no hiding now. See Dark's hand of it. Like, if you come over in my little world and you're like, hey, defending this, there is no defense for what we're discovering here. So these people have nowhere to go now. And I'm going to become a little bit more intolerant of just allowing people to spew anything, because the truth is, how many documents do I need to start making critical judgments? Right? I mean, this is like, this is the kind of information where, you have a change in history. I heard somebody, I think it was Mike or someone, talking about Japan. Japan's our good buddies, but we nuked the fuck out of them, dude. Right after we, air bombed them to death and probably did more damage. That's not the world we need to go into in the future. These resources are most certainly not limited to, we could feed everyone. Like, I just do not believe that we have a resource problem. We have a location problem, an assimilation problem. But all the money we're spending, like, hey, you guys understand, if we're discovering this here in Punch and Dark Side, I'd love your comments on this. The same amount of crimes going on in Europe. Has anyone thought of that? It's a bigger economy than ours. It's got a more heinous, much more heinous, man. Anyway, Dark Side, what do you think? And then Punch.
Yeah, so Gary, I agree with you 100%. And I know AI made the point that we don't need retribution. Well, I don't know what the right word is, but we need inspection with with a microscope. You know, we need to lock up the people that have done this to us. Right? We need, like, I guess, I'm going to use the word retribution, right? Like, we need
Well,
a level of
what does
retribution.
retribution mean?
Yeah, I don't know, but it needs to be ethical. It needs to be moral. We need to do it the right way. I do agree. We need to use courts, but our courts are so corrupt right now that I don't know how you can use courts. But I don't know how the system's going to repair itself when it's irreparably broken. Right? Like, that's the issue here. You point out COVID. I I got to tell you, man, it's 100 times worse than anybody even thinks. Right? Like, the
Yeah,
amount
that's
of
what I
death and
think.
destruction that was rained down on this country, the murders of people using remdesivir, the absolute heinous crimes committed, against the American people, against the world's people. It's insane, right? Like, it's absolutely insane what went down and what's been going down. We could talk about Haiti, we could talk about Libya, Iraq, Gaza. Like, we could just go right down the road. I love this country, and that's why we need to fix it. Right. So I don't know if the right word's retribution. I don't know
No,
what the
I
right
think,
word is.
well, I'm looking at the retribution where it refers to punishment inflicted on someone as a vengeance or repayment. Does it have to be vengeance but expect repayment? Look, I expect these people to be a symbol to the world for the next 100 years. Don't do this shit ever again. This is RICO, man. This is the irony, okay? These crazy motherfuckers built the whole concept of RICO, racketeering. I can't remember all the words, right? But it's a collusive act. I mean, I'm under a class action right now for this. The claiming that I met a guy twice and I'm a organized gang member. The funny thing is, this is exactly what they're all going to go down for, because you're going to be able to tie all of these emails and money, and so retribution, dude. I'd have the fucking guillotines out on the front counter, okay? Like to me, that's the way you deal with this shit. You stick the guillotine. Treason. See, I think that's what we need to start calling. Hey, this is high treason, man. This is not like, I'm sorry that we're living at the moment where we don't get to read about this. Okay. I'm sorry that somebody else is going to read about this in 10 years or 20 years about this story. Right now, we are literally actors on the ground here, no matter what the role is. I mean, this is what I learned from this space. I think it was Simon and someone else. And I was like, why am I coming on these spaces? I don't want to lead these rooms and be a leader or a influencer. I hate that. And then, it's kind of like, this is right before Trump gets elected. It dawned on me, maybe Simon's the one that said, hey, as long as you're going to give me time on this freaking platform, I'm going to take the opportunity to spread the word. And if we need more people and we need more sanity in these rooms, Simon can't expect to do all this. And we need a different pitch from all types of different people. So I think this thing goes all the way, man. We like just crunch over everybody. Shock and fucking awe. We'll just use the new 2025 what's it called? Verbiage of what's transparent, sunshine and transparency. I think that's an awesome thing you could run on, dude. I think you could run a campaign on sunshine and transparency and win for the next 12 years. Most certainly, there isn't anyone that can debate that we need transparency. If we get that, man, everything else just like it all rugs out, and these people are going to turn on each other so quickly. And there are going to be so many deaths, man. There's going to be car accidents, the weirdest car accidents. I would be shit scared. I tell you what. Bunch, what do you think, bro?
Ago or last election cycle were all Democrats and are now part of the MAGA movement. We're not looking for retribution or revenge. We're looking for justice. These people knew what they were doing with regard to COVID, and they knew what they were doing with regard to USAID and all the NGOs that are enriching politicians and pushing this nonsense around the world as part of our foreign policy apparatus. It is not okay. And what cannot happen is to say, you know, we're going to move forward and we're just going to let bygones be bygones. Serious scalps have to roll, not because we're seeking vengeance, but because it is what is just. And no society can stand with two tiers of justice. And I'm not talking about some mid-level bureaucrat at USAID or at some pharma company. I'm talking about major names. They need to be airtight. It needs to be just in their representation and the court system, if we can afford that. But if we don't do that, we cannot heal. I'm talking about Anthony Fauci. I'm talking about Clinton. I'm talking about big names. Those heads have to roll and justice must be meted out, or we cannot move forward as a country. It's not possible. So it's not emotion and it's not raw vengeance. It is justice. That's it.
Yeah, Punch, I totally agree with you. And it's going to be all over the world. I mean, the big names have to fall all over the world. The whole Epstein list. I mean, I could see the entire monarchy in England just falling from this. I mean, really, I could actually see that happening. Well, hell, I could see every country, if there is such a thing in the EU, failing. I mean, there's too much friction here, and the bad guys have to come out of we're gonna find the money, man.
Gary, I had lunch tonight with two German gentlemen who live in Mexico City, but they're German, and I could tell right away they were brainwashed. They have not this kind of transparency and this revelations that we're now seeing in the United States. They are still under this mass psychosis in Europe for the most part, because they don't have acts. They are being still censored. Those mechanisms are still in place. And I agree with you. This is a global phenomenon, particularly in Europe. And when that veil is unleashed and opened up, it's really ugly. And I just think these globalist forces, they need to be exposed and they need to be dealt with by humanity so that we can move forward.
Puncher, that's so clearly happening. Like it's just so symbolic when you say JD Vance, saying, "Hey, by the way, we're all telling the truth now. We were never defending democracy. This was a scam. This is a CIA. We're still like Zelensky is a national hero, and we got to take on Putin." And like, it's just chalk and cheese. And it's like, did you not get the memo? Like
Well, they didn't get the memo, Simon. They're still having their doors kicked in for posting truthful truthful things on social media. They are living in fear. And make no mistake about it, if November had gone the other way, that would be here in the United States today.
Totally.
100%.
But it would also be there too, man. They would magnify. They had locked everybody down by now.
Well, that was the point I was gonna make. Like, I would be if I would be in lockup. I'd be in the gulag. There's no doubt about it. So would like most of my friends. And if there is not the kind of justice that Puncher's talking about, like, make no mistake, the next time that one of the uniparty regains power, they will crack down 10 times harder than we've ever seen before. But I love that everyone is using the word color revolution, because that really is like the thread that has to be pulled on and dismantled, because it gets to the heart of everything.
Hey guys, I'm just noticing how full this room is with requests, and there's so many people in here. Why don't we take this time to whoever?
I'll jump down, Gary. I'll go
Well,
listen.
yeah, I would
So I'm
just
gonna
say
go to sleep.
let's rotate a bunch of people, and Mike Mack, I mean, people that want to stay up, it's cool. But I think we got about 8 or 10 people that I'd like to try and get up if we could.
I'll drop down, brother.
No,
Yeah,
Mike,
there's
you had
about-
your hand.
there's
Mike,
about
you had your
10
hand
here.
up. Mike, you had your hand up, and what I'll do is I'll just start, or Mary, if you start pulling people up.
Will do.
Who's next?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
Hey, thanks, Dave here. So, I just wanted to chime in on this thing about that Iraq war. And I hear people get emotional and what it was like back then, but I'll just tell you what I thought. I'm just, maybe smarter than average and can see bullshit. But when that shit happened, and when I was here on the radio, the first thing I thought was, what is the motive here? And they were telling us they hate us for our freedoms. I mean, seriously, they hate us for our freedoms. That's why these guys committed suicide. And all these things that were just such clear bullshit at the time. And then, they fly the bin Ladens out that night of. What's that all about? The whole thing was just, pretty paper thin from the beginning. So I know everyone got all emotional about all that. I don't blame you. But it was pretty thin. And then you looked at Richard Clarke's book, Enemies from Within. Did you see that? They had maps drawn out of Iraq and the oil fields and who gets what from the very beginning. And it was like, go time. This is it. We can debate about how that whole attack even happened. But it was pretty transparent that this was a plan that was already in place. And they used that to invade Iraq. And it was failable. That book, okay, it took a little while for Richard Clarke, but he was there. When that plane hit, he knew it was Al-Qaeda. They're all Saudis. These were, 19 Saudis, and we're invading Iraq. So, and I know Gary must know about this, being in energy, and I'm sure Simon knows all about this. But, it was there. So I'm just saying, you got to look through the bullshit and think a little bit before you leap when you get some emotional appeal like this, and think whether these stories, would rational people act this way when they're telling us these guys did this because they hate our freedoms. That's all.
Can I ask you, do you feel more proud of your country when all of this bullshit is being exposed, or do you feel more proud when you're like still think you're still under the whole pretense and stuff? Like, I don't know. I'm seeing more patriotism from America